Hello, everyone. We are less than 24 hours away from the 2023 NFL Draft. I'm bubbling with excitement here, and we're going to be revealing our mock drafts head to head. We work on these independently. In fact, I have not even seen Alex's mock draft yet, and he has seen mine just because he had to make the graphic. But we do have a lot of the same sources in terms of reporters that we have found reliable in the past. So typically our mocks end up looking more similar than a lot of other random pairs that you were to pick out of the NFL draft media. But we're competitive. We want to outduel each other, and we want to outduel the rest of the media because we've ranked pretty highly the last couple of years. So, not to toot our own horn, but we consider ourselves fairly informed in this process, although this year is quite difficult. But Alex at 1, I think that's just the free pick. It's going to be Bryce Young. It should be Bryce Young. The draft really starts at 2.
Yeah, one is really a free pick, I think, for pretty much everyone. And without further ado, the draft really does start at 2, and I'll get this slide put up. So there we go at pick number 2. We disagree. I
Already.
have I have Will Anderson, Kosta. You have Tyree Wilson. Honestly, to me, it was really a toss up. And my deciding factor was the report from Tony Pauline that said that Houston had knocked a little bit for Tyree Wilson for his medicals. And for me, I think a new head coach, a fairly new GM, I think they might want to play a little safer and go on the side of air of caution. And to me, Will Anderson is kind of that player a little bit, especially with that, possible foot injury for Tyree Wilson. So that's kind of my reasoning for Will Anderson. Let's hear yours for Tyree Wilson.
Honestly, it's a different report, medically related, where Albert Breer said that the Texans have passed Tyree Wilson medically, and I've gotten the sense that they prefer Tyree Wilson. There's been a couple sources that have said that he's a better scheme fit, that DeMeco Ryans prefers him. So I think as long as he has been passed medically, he's going to be the pick at 2.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone really knows what's
Yeah.
going on at 2. For all we know, it could end up being a quarterback. This could have been a massive smoke screen, but it
I,
doesn't
I
seem
would
like it
I
to
would be
me.
shocked. It doesn't sound
I
like it.
I would be shocked too. So now at number 3, we have the same pick in Paris Johnson Jr. That has been a really recent development. Really over the past couple days, I think it was reported again by Tony Pauling this past weekend that the Cardinals were looking for, or they're hearing some possible trade talks about a team trading up to take Paris Johnson, and then the report came out that no, the Cardinals themselves might end up taking Paris Johnson. So to me, it just felt like a solid, safe pick to put there between Cardinals could possibly take him, a team could possibly trade up and take him.
Yeah, if you showed me this pick 3 days ago, I would have been extremely confused, but somehow in those 3 days, the momentum has shifted towards this pick so strongly that I now feel more confident about it than any pick that isn't the first pick, honestly, which is odd, but they've got a big investment in Kyler Murray. They want to protect him as they should. I don't know if I would pick him over Will Anderson, but it sounds like he's going to be the pick. And now at 4 with the Colts, I had CJ Stroud here until about an hour ago, an hour or 2 hours ago, when it just seems like the reporters that we find reliable, the ones that were putting CJ Stroud were the ones that put out their mocks yesterday or early this
Mm-hmm.
morning, and anyone putting out a mock during the day or later today put Will Levis, and that just feels like there's been a leak that has Will Levis's name attached to the Colts, and I'm still very torn on this. I still could see this being smoke. I was really 50-50, honestly. I just ended up leaning Levis, which, by the way, I think would be a horrible decision. CJ Stroud is a much
Terrible,
better quarterback.
terrible. So I also made this decision fairly late, and it could 100% be smoke. I would not be shocked at all if it is, because, like you said, all the reports we've heard is that it's going to be Will Levis, but it makes so much more sense for it to be CJ Stroud. So I'm putting Will Levis there because that's all the reports that I heard. But they could be putting all these reports out to maybe deter a team from feeling the need to trade up to 3
Yeah, it's
and take
true.
CJ Stroud. So that's really what I was concerned about. But there was just too much noise for me to put CJ Stroud. So, I might end up, biting my words and have, might have end up being right about it all being smoke to prevent a team from trading up. But I just kind of had to make a decision here and move on. And then, yeah, and that's what we're doing. Moving on to 5, another spot where we disagree. Jalen Carter to the Seattle Seahawks. And you have Will Anderson at 5 to the Seahawks.
Yeah, honestly, I wanted to put Jalen Carter because it feels like a pick that everyone is projecting. It seems like the Seahawks have a certain level of comfort with the character concerns that surround Carter, and they've been willing to take chances on players with questionable character in the past, which has hit sometimes like Frank Clark and has missed other times like Malik McDowell. What it came down to for me is Will Anderson sliding to this pick, and I feel like just because they're comfortable with Carter's character doesn't mean that it's not a factor. And I would be surprised if the gap in their grade on Carter and Anderson based off their actual film is so wide that they're willing to still take Carter despite the huge character concerns that he comes with. So I just feel like they could pass on him in this situation. I'm not sure, but it's just hard to see Will Anderson sliding past this 5th pick.
Yeah, I totally understand that. And I think, again, it's another toss up pick. It might have been Daniel Jeremiah that mentioned, 50% of the people we've talked to said Jalen Carter 100% definitely will be the pick at 5 of the Seahawks. The other 50% say no way, the Seahawks are not taking Jalen Carter at all. So, once again, who really knows what's going on at number 5 for the Seahawks? Number 6, we both have Devin Witherspoon there. I think that has really become pretty clear. He's my second corner right behind Christian Gonzalez, but I have him really close.
Yeah.
And, I think Witherspoon, a little bit better tackler, so I think he might kind of fit that Lions mentality that they're kind of building up there in Detroit. But you mentioned the Paris Johnson pick you felt pretty comfortable with outside the first one. This number 6, Devin Witherspoon to the Lions, is what I feel pretty comfortable with outside of the first overall.
Yeah, I would agree with that. At 7, I feel confident in this pick if the Colts indeed take Will Levis.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of, I'm not going to lie to you, that's part of the reason why I put Will Levis, because I think if Stroud goes forward to the Colts, I'm not sure where to put Levis. But if Levis goes forward to the Colts, I'm pretty confident where Stroud lands. So for approaching this from the lens of trying to get the most correct picks possible, that was part of what factored into the decision at 4 with the Colts, because I knew I had a spot that I liked as a high chance landing spot for CJ Stroud. This would be a home run for the Raiders to be able to stay put and land CJ Stroud at number 7, A+.
Yep, I totally agree, and I second that opinion on putting Will Levis at 4. It helped me make my mock a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Because obviously neither of us have Anthony Richardson up here in the top 10. I think if CJ Stroud went 4, Will Levis probably would have also slid out of the top 10. And I'm going to be honest, I didn't want to have to deal with 2 of those guys falling out of the top 10 and figuring out their spots.
Yeah.
So, it all comes down to trying to get as many picks correct as possible, not trying to get every single pick right. And, you might kind of see that here and there, but I agree. CJ Stroud will not fall past 7, in my opinion.
Yeah. But that being said, teams in the NFL are not looking past themselves in the draft order, and that's why we're going to see some scenarios that no mock draft could account for, and that some players are going to slide, and 2 quarterbacks could slide. Now at 8 for the Falcons, I see both of us have Bijan Robinson. I was really torn on this pick between Bijan and Christian Gonzalez. Both would be solid picks, but what it came down to is the Falcons, by picking Pitts at the 4th overall a couple of years ago, showed that they're willing to buck historical trends or current perceptions of positional value in favor of a player that they find to be a difference maker on offense. And that's why I went with Bijan here.
Yeah. This was the final change I made. I did not want to put Bijan here.
Yeah.
All draft season since January, we had been hearing that Bijan Robinson, he's a running back. He's not going to go in the top 10. And then I saw these reports about Atlanta. I actually, for the longest time, I wanted to put him at Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And then, some
I
things
don't think
came
that right.
out. I was going to put him at Philadelphia until Peter King came out and had that report about the Eagles really liking Nolan Smith. And I was like, fine, I'm not going to put him at Philadelphia anymore. And I was stuck. I did not want to put Bijan at 8. Everyone was saying, Bijan was going to go 8. And then Tony Pauline said that he didn't think Bijan was going to get outside of the top 10. Daniel Jeremiah mocked Bijan to the Falcons, and I was still stuck. And I made that decision right when you texted me that you were done with your mock, and I said, all right, fine, I have to make a final decision, and this was my final decision. So that's that. I made it less than an hour ago.
Wow, that's something. Moving on to number 9, I got Jalen Carter to the Bears. They've been rumored to be willing to pick him if he's there. At the same time, I could totally see the Eagles moving 2 spots up with the Falcons. The Falcons could still get Bijan Robinson. That trade would make so much sense. And now you have Tyree Wilson here, and this is where I'm going to ask you: is this another case of you wanted to get a lot of picks right rather than endanger a string of picks by having a domino effect in your mock? Like, do you really think Tyree Wilson's going to fall all the way to 9 if he doesn't go in the top 3? Or is it just that you weren't sure if he was going to go Seahawks or Lions? And Carter and Witherspoon are so connected to those teams that you didn't want to miss out on getting each of those solid connections.
That was pretty much my reasoning. It was okay. It seems like Paris Johnson's going to go 3. A quarterback's going to go 4. I feel pretty comfortable with Carter at 5. Witherspoon's strongly connected at 6.
Yeah.
And to me, it was a toss-up of Tyree Wilson going 2. So I didn't want to, possibly get that second overall wrong and then also get wrong where I put Tyree Wilson. So, yeah, it was a little bit of a domino effect. We see slides on draft day.
Yeah.
If teams like the guys that they're comfortable with, Tyree Wilson could slide to 9, and I think the Bears would take him in a second.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I just couldn't get myself to not include Anderson in the top 7 picks. That just, if for some reason, seeing Anderson's name at 9 feels even more wrong than Wilson's name at 9, even though I do have Tyree Wilson going too. That's just my gut feeling there. So I sacrificed the Carter to the Seahawks connection for that. At 10, it seems like everyone's converging on Nolan Smith to the Eagles, honestly. It falls in line with the positions they prioritize in the first round. I'll say one thing is that Charlie Campbell's kind of adamant that this is going to be Lucas Van Ness, and he usually strays away from consensus and is very accurate in predicting mock drafts. So I will tip my hat to him if this is Lucas Van Ness over Nolan Smith.
Yeah, I think we've heard a lot out of the Eagles too the past 24 hours. We've heard Bijan Robinson rumors come back. We've heard, multiple defensive ends, Nolan Smith. We've heard that they like Jalen Carter. They like Tyree Wilson. They like Will Anderson, and they would want to try to move up for one of these guys. So, I think they're just going to take the best player on their board, whoever falls to them at 10, or possibly, like you mentioned, trade up to 8 with the Falcons. That would make a lot of sense. But now I think we can move on to 11 through 20. And here we go again with a little reveal to you. I don't think it's anything too crazy here. But at 11, we did end up having the same guy, Peter Skoronski, going to the Tennessee Titans.
Yep, I was kind of close to putting Anthony Richardson here. They definitely need a tackle, and Skoronski would be a good pick. But they've been so connected to the quarterbacks. What kind of swayed me away from that is 2 things. One, that they picked Malik Willis last year. Not that they believe in Malik Willis, but in fact that I think they don't believe in Malik Willis, and that could, throw caution into the wind for them for picking another really raw quarterback with a lot of traits after the first iteration of that move is not working too well for them. And the other thing that moved me away from that is that they've been rumored to be making a lot of calls to trade, most of them down and a few of them up, which makes me think they want to move up for Stroud or Levis, but if they miss out on them, then they want to move down, which that does not sound like they'd be taking Anthony Richardson if that's the case. So that's what I got there. Moving on to number 12, I've got Jackson Smith and Jigba becoming a wide receiver. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I see you have Gonzalez, which makes some solid sense. Those would both be solid picks for the Texans, and I just can't see a quarterback here. I feel like if they like the quarterback, they would pick him at 2.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of talk around, the draft community about, oh, the Texans will, take one of the defensive ends at 2 and, maybe take a quarterback, whether that's Will Levis, Anthony Richardson, Hendon Hooker at 12, or maybe move up from 12. Like, don't play games. If you have a quarterback that you
Yeah.
like, even if consensus is he's not worthy of the number 2 overall pick, if you like him, take him at 2. You don't play games with quarterbacks. We saw the Giants do that a couple years ago with Daniel Jones, when everyone thought he could last till their second first round pick, and they said nope, we're not taking any risks. We're taking him early. So I just think if you have a quarterback in mind, you take him as early as you can.
Yep. At 13, the Green Bay Packers have been heavily connected to the tight ends. They really value the testing numbers, and Dalton Kincaid hasn't been able to test in this process, which is why I'm giving them Michael Meyer here. I see you've got JSN. You've got them picking a wide receiver in the first round for the first time since 2002, days after trading away Aaron Rodgers. What a storyline that would be.
Yeah, and kind of what did it for me was the pick swap with the Jets. It seemed like they wanted to move up a couple spots. It wasn't just for a save of face. They're getting a first round pick next year, so I think they had a guy in mind. I didn't think a tight end they would have had to move up 2 spots for. We heard that the Jets really like Jackson Smith and Jigba, and that was kind of the holding point, that pick swap between 13 and 15. So to me, that was kind of like, ooh, maybe they know the Packers want JSN. So that was kind of my reasoning there. And it seems like we lost Costa. So
Okay.
we'll move on
I think
to.
I'm
All
good
right,
now.
cool. So just moving on to 14 now. I have Zay Flowers. You have Christian Gonzalez. My reasoning for Zay Flowers is I've kind of been on this train since like February when Brett Coleman brought it up, and I just would shoot myself in the foot if they ended up taking Zay Flowers and I changed it out of my mock. So it was just like I can't not do it and have them take Zay Flowers, and we don't know what the Patriots are doing anyways. So it was like whatever.
Yeah, honestly, that makes sense. They brought him in for a full day, taught him the offense. Apparently, I could see it happening. This is just one where I had to stop the Christian Gonzalez slide. I wasn't going to have him fall past here. I just hadn't found a spot since narrowly passing on him with the Falcons at 8.
Seems like wishful thinking to me.
Yeah, a little bit. I'm a Patriots fan. I'd rather have Christian Gonzalez than Zay Flowers. I was like, you know what? We don't really know what the Patriots are going to do. Might as well end the slide for a player that I really like, send him over here. So moving on to your team, the Jets, just one note on their trade with the Packers that you were saying that the Packers moving up would be maybe for Jackson Smith and Jigba. Could also be because they wanted to trade down anyways, and this could potentially give them an extra, say, third rounder because now they're 2 spots higher. If they have the Jets back against the wall, could have gotten greedy there. So that is interesting to consider what happened exactly in those negotiations. But everything we're hearing for the Jets is offensive tackle. I think Broderick Jones is a better player than Darnell Wright. Apparently, both come with character concerns. So, that's that.
Yeah, Rich Samini said on Twitter that if Jones was there, he would likely be the pick too. So that was kind of, another thing that kind of, to me, tipped the scales to Broderick Jones. We both have Emmanuel Forbes at 16 to the Commanders, and I didn't have this 2 days ago.
No.
But this was Charlie Campbell really leading the charge here with the fact that the Commanders like Forbes. And it seemed like all of a sudden, 2-3 days ago, everybody's putting Emmanuel Forbes in the first round after not really hearing his name at all in the first round conversation this entire draft process. And if Forbes does end up going in round 1, wherever he goes, Peter King was the one to really lead that charge with Forbes going in round 1.
Yep, that's true. And, I've got another team after that picking a cornerback that still isn't Joey Porter Jr., which it goes against what we were thinking earlier in the process. And that's Deontay Banks, who the Steelers are rumored to like. Apparently, Tomlin, the Steelers head coach, has a really good off-the-field relationship with Banks, who has played college football with his son. So there's a lot of connections there.
Yeah, I put Darnell right here. He was another guy that was potentially mentioned to the Steelers at 17. It was also mentioned a couple weeks ago that by Tony Pauline, I think that Darnell Wright could possibly go as high as 9, which is the Bears. We also heard some talk about a possible Steelers Bears swap if Jalen Carter is there at 9. So for me, the Darnell Wright pick at 17 was Steelers could pick him. If the Steelers pick swap with the Bears, which is a rumor we've heard, the Bears could also pick him
Yeah.
at 17. So it was kind of to cover both bases there at 17 for the Steelers.
Yeah, that makes sense. At 18, I've got the Lions going with, another tough guy who fits their culture with Lucas Van Ness.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Dalton Kincaid, I just I didn't really have another spot for him in the first round, and that spot opened up because that's where I used to have Bijan Robinson. So that spot opened up when I moved Bijan, and I shuffled a couple things around, and now that's where Kincaid lands, and I think it would make some sense.
Yeah.
They need
I
a
think
tight end.
this Lions pick is interesting because I feel like it's one of the few in round 1 that we've heard like no player specific connections there.
Nothing.
Probably because they
Nothing.
have another pick that people are worrying about more. But that
Yes. Yeah, and moving on to 19 now. This is where I have Anthony Richardson falling. He could definitely slide past this pick. I think he could go 20 to the Seahawks. He could, go past this later in the first round. But Charlie Campbell said that they really like him. He didn't think Richardson would be there. In my scenario, I have him falling there. Tampa Bay's in a rebuild. They could go a million different places. They could trade out. So I just felt like a good spot to put Richardson.
Yeah, that makes sense. But a couple reliable reporters did say that they don't really want to draft a quarterback yet. They know they're in a rebuild. They don't want to rush. And I agree with that. I don't think dropping Richardson into that team would yield success in his NFL career. I've got them going Darnell Wright. You build a team through the trenches. We'll see if the character holds up. And another pick right after this where I've got another team passing on Richardson, kind of the same logic as I explained to the Texans earlier. If the Seahawks really loved Richardson enough to take him in the first round and tie their names and their future to him, they'd pick him 5th overall. So I don't see this one happening. Our good friend at Pro Football Network, Tony Pauline, said that he is persuaded that 20 or in a trade down, Osiris Torrance will become a Seahawk. So, I'll follow Tony on this one.
Yeah, I followed Tony too. That was the only. Usually, when I hear only one player to team connection throughout kind of the whole draft process, and that was kind of the case for the Seahawks at 20. There was nothing else clear. I'm like, all right, let's go with it because that's the only connection we have.
Yeah, actually, Matt Miller said that a GM told him that the floor for Myles Murphy are the Seahawks at 20 if they don't go edge at with the 5th pick. So my plan initially was, even though he has a checkered past in predicting reports correctly, I was going to give him this one pick with Murphy to the Seahawks, but I had Will Anderson going at 5, so I couldn't do that anymore. I'm intrigued to find out whether that one is going to come true, given how confident he was on it.
Yeah, I thought about that too. I felt weird mocking a D tackle and a D end to the Seahawks, who could work to shore up that interior offensive line as well to protect Geno. Yep. Moving now to the third half or the final third of the first round. At 21, I have Jordan Addison. You have Dalton Kincaid. We're pretty sure the Chargers are going pass catcher. My reasoning for Jordan Addison here is that the wide receiver coach that recruited Addison to Pitt is now the wide receiver coach in Los Angeles. So I heard that and I put it in pen. I said, if Addison gets there, it makes way too much sense for the Chargers to take him.
That's a good point. You might end up being right on that one. Dalton Kincaid's a guy who is projected in round 1. I expect him to go in round 1, but I haven't really heard him connected to a specific team. I think he'd make sense for the Chargers. That really would be a big receiving weapon for Justin Herbert. So I went in that direction, and I've got a wide receiver coming off the board a pick later, but it's not Addison yet. It's Zay Flowers, who the Ravens have been connected with throughout the process, even back in the East-West Shrine game in January, when they were said to just be all over Flowers with their representatives just around him all week. And I think that he could definitely be the pick here and falls in line with the receivers that they've drafted recently, who are more smaller, shiftier guys.
Yeah, and I have Deonte Banks, a guy that, has pretty much been rumored to be a first-round lock, and I think the Ravens, always love drafting their defensive back. So just, kind of made some sense there. 23 to the Vikings. We both have quarterbacks. I have Hendon Hooker. You have Anthony Richardson. I think if Richardson's there at 23, it makes a lot of sense for the
Oh,
Vikings.
yeah.
But I think we've kind of heard that the Vikings have been doing their work around the quarterbacks, and it seems like Hendon Hooker is trending towards a round one conversation. So that's kind of why I put him at 23.
Yeah, I think the Vikings have made no secret that they want a quarterback. Not sure they're going to go trade up for one, but I think if one's there when they pick, they definitely could go that direction. And this is a good spot for a quarterback. You get a year to learn. Kevin O'Connell's a good young offensive coach, so not a bad spot to land for either of these guys. Moving on to pick 24, I've got Joey Porter Jr., the big cornerback that that's the type of corner that they like in Jacksonville. He goes there opposite Tyson Campbell. That's one of the biggest cornerback duos in the NFL.
Yeah, and I have Lucas Van Ness. He was reported as one of the guys that the Jaguars are looking for, and I think they could just continue to build that defensive line. 25, I have John Michael Schmitz. He's been strongly connected to the Giants, and Tony Pauling is another pick that he's insistent on. And that's just kind of trusting Tony.
Yeah, that's a lot of trust in Tony because no one else is really saying that. That's just Tony riding that train. So I'm going to go with what a lot of other people are saying, and that's if Jordan Addison's available, the Giants are probably going to pick him. Moving on to 26, if the guy you have here, which is Michael Myers, there, he's going to be the pick. That's for some reason just seemed to have been completely leaked. It seems to be common knowledge, but he's off the board. I think there's a couple other guys that they would love, but including Bijan Robinson, who are also off the board. So I kind of was scratching my head on this one, but Will McDonald seems like a solid pick. I know their defensive coordinator went down to the Iowa State Pro Day just to see him, have dinner with him. So I figured, let's go with that one.
Yeah, that makes some sense. So 27, we both have Miles Murphy. I didn't hear any reports about this at all. So when I was really confused. I was like, why do we both have Miles Murphy here? It just kind of, the board fell that way. I kind of filled out the other 4 spots before I did this one. Because I was just kind of stuck, and I was like, Miles Murphy's kind of a first round guy, and that's the only spot left, and the Bills could continue to add to that D line. So that's why I put him there. Why did you put him there?
This is cracking me up because I had him at 20 to the Seahawks for the reason that I mentioned earlier. And then because this morning, actually, I had Will Anderson sliding. I don't know.
9, probably.
I've been through this too many times, but I had Jalen Carter at 5 to the Seahawks, Miles Murphy at 20. When I switched to Anderson at 5, I had to move Murphy out of pick 20, but I had already done my whole first round, including actually I've also done rounds 2 to 7 on my own, but there was too much to shuffle around, so I had to just find Murphy a spot. I moved Torrance, who I originally had for the Bills, to the Seahawks and slotted Murphy in at 27.
Yeah, it'll be really funny if that happens.
Yeah. Broke a luck.
And then number 28, I have Joey Porter Jr. I just think it's best player available at a position that they could use, some help with trying to defend the top teams in the AFC.
Yep, I've got a fun pick at 28. Joe Mixon has been in a slew of legal concerns in the last few months. What if the Bengals just say, all right, you can move on. We've gotten good use from you. You're kind of an older running back now, and we're going to replace you with Jahmyr Gibbs, who's an extremely explosive threat that just takes that offense to yet another level. That would be really fun. At 29, we've got the Saints going with Kalijah Kancey, both of us, who Tony Pauline, I know, has rumored that they are neighbored with Kancey. I could also see Kancey going one pick earlier to the Bengals, though.
Yeah, and I'd just like to point out that I put Kancey there over a month ago without kind of hearing anything.
Yeah,
it just kind of seemed like it made some sense. They like their smaller defensive linemen. They can tend to pick some guys that we think is reaches. And after hearing, some rumors of Kancey to the Saints, I felt like I had to put him there.
Yeah. At 30, I've got the Eagles. You were saying earlier you didn't want to give a team a defensive end and defensive tackle. Well, Howie Roseman loves his big guys, so I'm going to give him a defensive end and a defensive tackle. I feel like there's a few of these teams that want or need defensive tackles towards the end of the first round, so I think we could see a few go off the board, and I've got Bresee here to the Eagles.
Yeah, I went for an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman. I thought, they could probably use a guard more than they could a defensive tackle right now. And I thought that maybe I'd put in a guy that's kind of been maybe a little bit rumored to the end of round one that might, surprise some people. So that's why I have Steve Avila there, the guard from TCU.
Yeah, Benjamin Albright put him at 18th overall in his mock draft, and I was, whoa, all right, that's high, but he could be one of those guys who slides in. And then the Chiefs are rumored to love Quentin Johnston, and there's even talk that they could move up the board to select him. I think maybe because they might need to jump the Bills, but there's also a scenario in which he falls right into their lap, and I think that this could be his floor.
Yeah, I think it probably is. It seems like the Chiefs are going to end up taking a wide receiver, whether that's Zay Flowers if he's there, Quentin Johnson. But I didn't really have a great spot for Quentin Johnson. I thought about the Giants, I thought about the Bills, and then I figured if he was there at 31, he's getting picked by the Chiefs, so that's why I put him there.
Yeah. Given that I did 6 more rounds, I'm going to give you a few bonus picks at the top of round 2 that
Sure.
I think are some solid connections. At 32, I've got Mozzie Smith going to the Steelers. A few picks later, I think a couple centers could come off the board. We could see Joe Tippmann going to the Colts at 35 and John Michael Schmitz to the Seahawks at 37. Just a few picks to watch out on if the board follows this way and those guys are available heading into round 2.
Yeah, I think those picks, especially Mozzie Smith, we've heard that connection for so long that the Steelers love him, and I think it makes too much sense. So I could definitely see that. Now I think we kind of want to wrap up with some guys whose names haven't been thrown around the first round conversation at all. That may end up being the Cole Strange pick of this year. So I'll let you start off. If you have one or a couple guys, you can just name your first one, and then I'll name one or two as well.
Yeah, this is funny enough. I texted you a few hours ago saying we should do this at the end of our show, and came up with my guy. And I see Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft drop at around 8 o'clock or whatever it was, and he's got that guy in the first round. And this is a player that I had never once seen in a first round mock draft or been rumored to go in the first round, and that's Wisconsin defensive tackle Keanu Benton. I was floored that, I came up with that just for Daniel Jeremiah to mock him there. So maybe there's something there, but I with these teams needing defensive tackle at the end of the first round and the explosiveness he brings, the pass rush potential he showed at the Senior Bowl, I could see it happening. If you want to go down the Cole Strange route, a small school offensive lineman or offensive guard that's going to shock someone, how about Cody Mauch, our boy that we interviewed last summer? How about Cody Mauch going into the first round? And everyone's like, who? From North Dakota State? He doesn't even have teeth? What? If you're looking for Cole Strange, maybe that's the guy.
So funny enough, Keanu Benton was one of the first names that came to mind for me as well. You texted me that, and that we should come up with a couple guys, and I was looking through my board. I was like, oh, Keanu Benton. I've heard of analysts, not guys connected with the media or anything like that like him. So I was like, you know what, maybe somebody in the NFL likes him too. And then I pull up DJ's mock and I see Keanu Benton. I'm like, this is definitely who Kosta was talking about. So yeah, the Keanu Benton makes a lot of sense to me. Cody Mauch was another guy that I thought of because it seems like a lot of people really like him. But then the other name I have is BJ Ojulari, the edge rusher from LSU.
Yeah,
he seems like a name that people really do like, kind of the first part of round 2, and we know edge rushers can get pushed up boards because they're so important. So he was kind of a guy that I thought maybe could end up the end of round 1, maybe for a team that's looking at an edge rusher, if they all kind of go and the 18 to 26 range. If a bunch of edge rushers go off the board there, I think Ojulari's name could end up being heard the 29, 30, 31.
Yeah, I think he especially falls under the category of when you get to early day 2 and you're looking at 10, 15 guys that could have gone round 1 but didn't, and you're expecting them to be the first 10, 15 names off the board in round 2. That's never how it works. Some of them are going to slide even farther, and there's going to be some guys that never really had a projection in round one that are go really high in round two. That could be BJ Ojolari, for example, 39 to the Panthers.
Yeah, and then another name that kind of has been thrown around the first round conversation a little bit for the past 2 weeks that I had considered as a possible surprise first round pick. Kind of before that was a DJ Turner, the cornerback from Michigan, but he's another name that we could see. Again, cornerbacks also kind of seem to becoming more and more valuable in today's NFL. So those are a couple names of guys that we could end up seeing that we don't have in our mocks, but we never get all 32 names right. So it will be fun. What are we? 21 hours away from the first pick of round one. So it's been a crazy pre-draft process. We know one pick for a fact in CJ Stroud, and other than that, that is
Wait, I just realized the typo that you
I just realized that too.
No, we know
nice.
Bryce Young is going number one. I apologize to all the viewers who
I don't know why.
Be saying Bryce Young at number one for Alex. That's just a typo. We'll have that fixed when we put up the mock tomorrow morning.
Yeah. So, anyways, again, that should say Bryce Young. But
oh man, we've thrown some viewers for a loop the last 36 minutes.
We have. But yeah. Thanks everyone for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks for sticking with us the entire pre-draft process, and we'll look forward to recapping the entire draft and giving our way too early draft grades when this is all done.